Hey there, I'm Andrew Mitrcih. Let me take you through what's happening in Britain today, because this is not just another news cycle. This is October 7th, and 2 years ago, something changed the world. I used to sit at a desk inside one of the biggest media networks, watching how facts got bent to fit the agenda, and one day I said enough. I walked out. Now I report to you directly. No filters, no corporate interests, just what's actually happening. And today we've got a lot to unpack. Before we dive into the chaos, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because this kind of independent journalism, it doesn't run on ad revenue from corporate masters. It runs on you. And if you believe in what we're doing here, if you think truth matters more than spin, consider becoming a channel sponsor. It's not just support. It's a statement that you want real news, not propaganda dressed up as journalism. So let's talk about Britain. Today marks 2 years since the October 7th attacks, when extremist groups launched coordinated violent acts against Israel. 2 years. And what's happening in the UK? Protests. Large-scale demonstrations are planned across Britain, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he's not holding back. He's calling these protests unpatriotic. Think about that for a second. Unpatriotic. The man wrote an editorial for The Times where he warns that Britain has become indifferent to antisemitism, and he says this poses a genuine threat to the nation and its values. Now, whether you agree with Starmer or not, you have to understand the weight of what he's saying here. The leader of the country is essentially drawing a line in the sand, saying these demonstrations cross a boundary. And the timing? October 7th, the anniversary of tragic loss of life. The imagery alone is explosive. But here's where it gets complicated, because while these protests are happening on British streets, while people are marching with Palestinian flags and chanting slogans, something else is unfolding thousands of miles away, and that's Gaza. The Daily Mirror is running with a headline that honestly stopped me in my tracks. Hope in hell. That's what they're calling it, hope in hell. Because even as talks about a ceasefire between certain groups and Israel are supposedly happening, Gaza continues to be struck by devastating bombardments. The Mirror describes one of the most lethal strikes of the entire conflict. Journalists stationed at the border watched as bombs tore through Gaza, turning vast sections into rubble, prolonging the suffering of thousands of innocent civilians. Hope in hell. Can you think of a better way to describe negotiations happening while bombs are still falling? I can't. And look, I need to be clear about something. When it comes to conflicts like this, there are no easy answers, no clean narratives. But what we're seeing is a situation where ceasefire talks are occurring simultaneously with continued violent actions, and that contradiction, that's not just ironic, it's tragic. Stay with me here because I know this is heavy, but this is what's actually happening while most media outlets are busy obsessing over celebrity gossip or the latest political theater. This matters. Real people are caught in the middle of this. Now, back in Britain, other stories are breaking that tell you a lot about where the country's priorities are. The Guardian is warning that new visa rules introduced by the Labour government could seriously damage the NHS. Nurses are already sounding the alarm. Think about that. The National Health Service, already stretched beyond its limits after years of underfunding and the battering it took during the pandemic, now faces potential staffing crises because of immigration policy changes. And speaking of policy, the Conservatives are making promises, big promises. They're pledging a blitz on what they're calling criminal hotspots, promising more stop and search operations, tougher enforcement. The Daily Express frames it as targeting professional criminals who will be sent to prison under Conservative Party plans, forcing police to build stronger cases against shoplifters. And look, crime is a real issue. People are genuinely concerned about safety on their streets, theft from stores, organized criminal operations. But is this the solution? More aggressive policing? Or is this political posturing ahead of the next election cycle? Before I go further, quick reminder, smash that like button if you're finding this valuable, drop a comment below telling me what you think about any of these stories, and subscribe for more unfiltered analysis. Meanwhile, the Metro and Daily Mail are both leading with a massive police operation. 28 homes raided in the dead of night. What for? A sophisticated phone theft ring. Apparently, the masterminds behind this operation were smuggling up to 40% of all stolen London smartphones to China. 40%. Let that sink in. We're not talking about some petty thieves snatching phones in pubs. This is organized crime on an industrial scale, international networks, supply chains, distribution routes. This is serious business, and the fact that it took this long to crack down on it tells you something about how sophisticated these operations have become. But here's something that caught my attention in a different way. The Daily Telegraph is reporting that MI5, Britain's domestic intelligence agency, was kept in the dark about a major embarrassment involving a legal case against an alleged foreign operative. Security services were apparently blindsided by the collapse of the case, along with officials from the Home Office. Now, why does this matter? Because if your intelligence agencies don't know what's happening in your own court system regarding national security cases, that's a coordination failure. That's different branches of government not talking to each other when they absolutely should be. And in today's world, with threats coming from multiple directions, that kind of disconnect is dangerous. The Telegraph also mentions that Shadow Justice Minister Robert Jenrick has declared he would remove activist judges to combat what he calls a pro-migrant bias in the system. Strong words, politically charged words. And regardless of where you stand on immigration, the idea of purging judges based on perceived political leanings should concern anyone who cares about judicial independence. Now let's shift gears to something completely different, but equally revealing about modern Britain. Remember Madeleine McCann? Of course you do. The little girl who vanished during a family vacation in Portugal back in 2007, one of the most high-profile missing persons cases in modern history. Countless investigations, international media coverage, theories ranging from plausible to absolutely wild. Well, the Daily Star is now reporting that artificial intelligence might crack the case. Yes, you heard that right. AI. Robot detectives, as they're being called. An investigator is quoted saying that advanced algorithms could potentially analyze the massive amount of data accumulated over the years and find patterns or connections that human investigators missed. Is this realistic? Honestly, I don't know. AI has proven incredibly powerful in pattern recognition, data analysis, sorting through vast amounts of information that would take humans years to process. But solving a cold case that stumped professionals for nearly 2 decades? That's a tall order. Still, if there's even a chance, even a slim one, that technology could bring closure to a family that suffered unimaginable pain, then it's worth exploring. Stranger things have happened. And in an era where AI is being used for everything from medical diagnosis to financial forecasting, why not criminal investigation? Let me bring you back to something important, though. The Financial Times, which tends to focus on business and economics rather than the drama of daily headlines, is reporting that OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, is targeting a 10% stake in AMD, the American microchip manufacturer, through a multi-billion-dollar chip deal. Why does this matter? Because the AI arms race is real, and whoever controls the hardware, the actual chips that power these systems, they control the future of technology. And while we're talking about international business, the FT also notes that Britain has become the largest overseas market for BYD, the Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer. So while politicians debate immigration policy and judges rule on national security cases, the actual flow of global commerce continues. Chinese EVs flooding British roads, American tech companies making billion-dollar hardware deals. The world keeps spinning, and these economic shifts matter just as much as the political theatre, maybe more, because they shape the reality we'll all be living in 10 years from now. The Sun, in typical fashion, ran a full front-page tribute to romance novelist Jilly Cooper, who passed away following a tragic fall. The headline plays on words. Rest in peace becomes play in peace, a nod to her genre of romantic fiction. The Queen Consort Camilla even weighed in, saying may her afterlife be filled with incredibly handsome men and devoted dogs. You know what? That's actually a perfect tribute. It captures the spirit of Cooper's work, her love of animals, her celebration of romance and passion. Sometimes the best tributes are the ones that make you smile even as you mourn. All right, let's pull this all together because I know we've covered a lot of ground here. We started with the October 7th anniversary, with Prime Minister Starmer calling protests unpatriotic, with his warning about rising antisemitism in Britain. We talked about Gaza, about ceasefire negotiations happening while bombardments continue, about hope in hell. We looked at threats to the NHS from visa policy changes, at conservative promises to crack down on crime, at a massive phone theft ring busted by police, at intelligence agencies being left in the dark on security cases. We discussed AI potentially solving the Madeleine McCann mystery, OpenAI making billion-dollar chip deals, and Chinese electric vehicles dominating the British market. And we remembered Jilly Cooper with a smile. That's today. That's just one day in Britain, and every single one of these stories connects to something larger. The October 7th protests and Starmer's response, that's about national identity, about how societies process grief and political expression. Gaza and the ceasefire talks, That's about the human cost of conflict, about the gap between diplomatic language and ground reality. NHS visa rules, economic consequences of political decisions, crime crackdowns, the eternal tension between security and civil liberties, AI investigating cold cases and making chip deals, the unstoppable march of technology reshaping our world in ways we're only beginning to understand. And Jilly Cooper, a reminder that even in dark times we need art, romance, stories that lift us up, and dogs. We definitely need dogs. So here's what I want you to take away from this. The world is complicated. The headlines are often misleading or incomplete. What looks like unrelated stories on different newspaper front pages, they're actually threads in the same tapestry. Everything connects. Politics, economics, technology, culture, international relations, they all weave together. And that's why independent voices matter. That's why channels like this exist, because if you rely only on mainstream narratives, you're getting fragments, carefully selected pieces designed to push particular agendas. But when you step back and look at the whole picture, when you connect the dots yourself, you start to see what's really happening. So, before I let you go, I want to ask you something. Hit that like button if this kind of comprehensive, no-spin analysis is what you're looking for. Subscribe if you want more of this every day. And seriously, if you can, consider becoming a channel sponsor. I don't have corporate backing. I don't have advertisers telling me what I can and cannot say. I have you. And if enough of you believe in what we're building here, we can keep doing this. We can keep speaking truth. We can keep connecting dots that others ignore or deliberately obscure. The establishment media, they have billions of dollars, massive infrastructure, entire teams of producers and editors. We have something they don't. We have credibility, we have independence, and we have a community that actually cares about truth more than entertainment, about substance more than spin. So stick around. Tomorrow brings new headlines, new stories, new threads to pull, and I'll be here, breaking it all down, making sense of the chaos, giving you the real story. Because you deserve better than what they're selling. You deserve the truth, or at least the most honest attempt at finding it. I'm Andrew Mitrcih. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.